Hey guys, it's Kenan in my review for the film that all of you very much are anticipating. That, of course, is Playmobil the movie. And what Playmobil the movie is essentially about is we center on this brother and sister. We have Marla and also her sister Charlie, and basically they end up in this museum of sorts where they're playing this, basically they come across this model of the Playmobil game, and after Charlie is fooling around, they both end up getting sucked into this game, and basically Marla is separated from her brother, and so now she has to go on this quest to track him down and all that kind of stuff, and basically hilarity ensues, whatever. So, Playmobil the movie, yeah, I saw this film. I'm sure a lot of you didn't, but look, I try to see everything that I possibly can throughout the year, whether it's good, whether it's bad. I try to seek it out as much as I can, and considering this is a film that I really knew wasn't going to get a lot of, it wasn't going to get very good box office, numbers and things like that, and a lot of people weren't going to see it, I became increasingly interested just to see how bad it could possibly be, and Playmobil the movie is every bit as bad as I pretty much expected. Now look, there definitely are some things that do bring this movie from being one of the worst of the year for me, but this is still a really terrible film that is clearly just a blatant product placement that really doesn't do much of anything to stand out on its own. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And honestly, I don't have much to say acting-wise, other than most of the cast actually isn't really the problem here. Anya Taylor-Joy and Gabriel Bateman, I think, both give solid performances. I think they both work well together. Even though they don't have many scenes together, they do work well together. And Anya Taylor-Joy, I mean, it's rare for her to give a bad performance. It's hard for her to be terrible, and she's not terrible here, truthfully. She definitely is trying to bring something that's, not in the film, that's not in the narrative. She's trying to bring that with her acting, and she does almost get there. She does do a solid job for the most part. The other actor that is very solid besides her is Daniel Radcliffe. You saw him in the trailers as, Rex Dasher. Not really in this movie very much at all, but whenever he's on, he's charming, he's fun, he's someone that I definitely thought, was enjoying the film for the most part. Everyone else, though, really just seems like they're either bored or they just can't act whatsoever. Adam Lambert is way too over the top. Meghan Trainor is not convincing at all, and she's only in one scene. Kenan Thompson, I didn't think was very good here. I gotta say, though, the most surprising for me was Jim Gaffigan, who I thought was surprisingly terrible here. He sounded so bored throughout this entire movie. It did not seem like he really wanted to be here very much at all. But again, the acting really isn't the big problem here. It's really just everything else. So, with all that said, let's just get into the rest of this shit, because, oh my god, there is just so much to dislike here. There's so much that is just bad about this movie going on, technical-wise, and, look, you would think for a film like this, the director here would be some no-name guy that's very incompetent and things like that, but truthfully looking into it, this guy does have talent. Lino DiSalvo, he's done animation on things like Frozen, Tangled, Bolt, Meet the Robinsons, so this guy clearly does have talent, but he hasn't ever directed a film, and I think that's really what this is a sign of here. This is a sign of a guy who knows how to animate something, but he doesn't know for his life how to direct something, and it really doesn't work here at all. The comedy falls incredibly flat. The movie seems to have no idea who it wants to appeal to. There are scenes where it's very much appealing to kids, but then there's scenes where it's trying to be a lot more, edgy in that way. It's trying to be a lot more adult, and it just really doesn't seem to work at all, and I just don't really think the humor works here. And anytime the movie gets serious as well, it feels incredibly forced. The tone here is just not very good, and I think the biggest problem with this movie is that it just doesn't know how to find its own identity. I think you needed a much more talented director than someone who has never directed before. Again, he knows how to animate, but he's not animating this movie. So that's why the animation here, which we'll get into, isn't really on the level of those films I talked about. And just the directing here just isn't really that great at all. I don't really think he did a very good job directing this movie. But the screenplay is really my biggest issue here. This film is a giant mess. It truly has no idea what it wants to be. And like I said, for films like this, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, I try to hope that they're not going to be just blatant product placement. People thought that was going to happen with the Lego movie, and we got something really great out of it. They were able to find actually a very heartwarming and compelling story in that way. Playmobil, the movie, essentially just feels like someone watched the Lego movie, saw how effective it could be, saw how it increased toy sales, and thought, what if we could do our own version of that? But we're going to lack all the heart, we're going to lack all the fun, and just all of the goodness that made that film. We're just going to suck all of that here. And so what we're left with is a film that really just has no idea what it wants to be. There's so many things that are wrong with this film. Getting into our main characters, I mean, like I said, the main characters of this movie are supposed to be Anya Taylor-Joy and her brother, and they maybe have the least amount of stuff going on. I mean, we know absolutely nothing about these two. We really rush through. If you guys saw in the trailer, the movie does start off in live action. That's maybe the first, like, 10 minutes of the movie. I'm not even joking. We have no time to care about these two. They're just kind of, like, sucked into this environment, and there's this revelation that happens in the third act of the movie, and I felt nothing. In like, the first, 10 minutes of the movie, and there's this revelation that happens, like, the first 10 minutes of the movie, and I felt nothing. I thought it was so dumb the way it was done, especially since it's literally right after this big, like, musical number that happens, and that alone just tells you how tonally inconsistent this film is and how it doesn't know what to do with these characters. And for some reason, even though it's supposed to be following this brother and sister, the movie separates them throughout the entire film to the point where you actually forget that that's what's going on here. Marla is stuck with Jim Gaffigan throughout a bunch of the movie. She's stuck with Daniel Radcliffe, so you really have no time to get to know this character. She very quickly becomes just that reactionary sort of role where she's just, kind of like the fish out of water in this situation, and there really is no discernible character there, and it's very disappointing because, again, I love Anya Taylor-Joy. I think she's a fantastic actress. I think anything she usually does is great, and I have no idea why they gave her such a, why they sold her so short in this movie. And that's not just her. Daniel Radcliffe, if you guys remember, there was the most well-known trailer for this movie makes it seem like Daniel Radcliffe is the main character of this movie. They forgot the movie's supposed to be about these two. And it makes sense because the movie itself forgets what it's really all about. Daniel Radcliffe is in this movie for maybe, I want to say, like 10 or 15 minutes, and every time he shows up, he's nothing more than just a deus ex machina. He's here when the characters are in grave danger, when they need someone to come in at the last minute, and that's exactly when he shows up. And this Rex Dasher character, he's clearly just here to sell toys. He's clearly just here so they can have some sort of character that kids will enjoy, that kids will, want like a spin-off of or something, and it just feels so desperate in the way. Anytime he's like mugging at the camera, it's just so obvious that they're doing whatever they can to try to get something out of this guy, and it just does not work at all. And all of the characters pretty much just end up feeling this. They don't feel like characters. They just feel like products. They feel like products that are shoved into this movie in an attempt to sell toys, and it just really bothered me because, again, I saw potential here. I saw them being able to do something more than what they had, but unfortunately what we have here is just a soulless screenplay that really has no idea what it wants to be. It keeps these characters apart far too long. It's also incredibly convoluted. There's way too many characters in this movie that some of them just end up serving zero purpose whatsoever, and I just don't think the film was very well written very much at all. There's so many jokes that fall flat. It's just a really bad screenplay all around. So yeah, I really did not like the writing here very much at all. The animation in this film, look, it's not the worst animation in the world, but for what it is, it's very bland. I mean, most of this movie, it's just very bland, sort of grayscale type backgrounds, and it's one of those animated films where it's not doing much aesthetically to the point where I think it is going to bore kids. I think kids aren't even going to buy into this. I think kids are going to be bored by this movie because there's really not much going on that is aesthetically pleasing. There's one scene where suddenly it gets like all colorful and things like that, and of course it's the scene where Meghan Trainor shows up. Because, of course, clearly the film only cared about, making the film look as good as it possibly could so they could really sell off that great Meghan Trainor single because, oh, kids just love Meghan Trainor and we know how talented she is and we know how much they want to listen to the next Meghan Trainor thing and just give me a fucking break. Like, seriously, that alone tells you what this movie's focused on. It's not focused on telling a story. It's focused on being a product. It's focused on making money. It's focused on cashing in on these actors, and the animation really doesn't do much to stick out here at all. There's nothing creative about it. There's nothing that really sticks out to me. I mean, somehow the film manages to make this car chase boring. There's a car chase in this movie, and it should be really exciting. It's one of the most lifeless car chases I think I've ever seen. It's so dull, and I don't think they did a very good job with that at all. So yeah, the animation here really doesn't do much to stick out. The score isn't very good here. Which also, going back to the score, there are points in this movie where it's clearly trying to be a musical, as I said, and it really doesn't work at all. There's maybe only one song that really didn't annoy me, but the other ones I thought were just very pandering. They felt like they were really just here once again, not because the movie wanted to be a musical, because they wanted to make some bank on that soundtrack, and they wanted kids to be able to listen to it, and for them to be like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever, and just... Again, nothing feels like they had their own original vision. Everything feels like they're just copying off of other films. Lego Movie 2 had music, so I guess this is going to be a musical too. It just, nothing feels like this is something that they planned. This all just feels like they watched other movies and they tried to copy off of them, and it very much does show, because there really isn't much of an attempt at all to have any kind of variety here, to do really anything different, and it just sinks the entire film. In the editing, my god, this film is 90 minutes long. It honestly feels like 2.5 hours. I mean, it's so dull, and there's so many scenes that just go on forever. That car chase scene I was talking about, it goes on for like what felt like 20 minutes. It really felt like it was never going to end in that way. There's so many scenes that are like that here that just drag on and on and on. And just overall, I don't think this film is paced very well. And I can't even tell if it's a matter of they rushed it or if it was too slow. It's kind of just an amalgamation of all those things, and just overall really just brings the entire film down. So yeah, Playmobil is just a giant dumpster fire for the most part. This is a film that has such little effort. It's so lazy. It really doesn't do much of anything to flesh out these characters. It wastes so much talent, and just overall, it's nothing more than just a product. That's all this movie ends up being. You have actors here that clearly are into the material, that clearly were game to make this something better than it was. You had potential here to really give us something great, but unfortunately all we got here was a film that clearly is just trying to copy off of other film successes and isn't really doing much of anything to stick out here. And as a result, that's why I think nobody is seeing this. I don't think anybody cares about this movie. I don't think there are going to be kids that are entertained by this movie. I just think overall this film was a really bad idea. I don't think this film should have seen the light of day. I honestly would have been fine if this was a film that just stayed shelved, because they clearly had no idea what to do with it whatsoever. Playmobil the movie is easily one of the laziest films of the entire year, and I'm definitely going to give it a D. If the acting wasn't as good as it was, it really would have been one of the worst films of the year. Really would have. But, yeah, Playmobil the movie, you guys didn't see it. It's probably going to leave theaters literally this week. So, I mean, don't see it, I guess, because it's not even going to be there. But, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.